Welcome, friends. Welcome to Fearless with me, Shauna Klingerman. I am your host, Shauna Klingerman. I am a full time artist, a creative mentor, and simply put, I believe in living, loving, and creating without fear. Together here at Fearless, we will carve out space for ourselves and our creativity, space to care for our mental health, and most importantly, we will carve out space where we can show up exactly as we are right now with our full, messy, creative hearts. No matter where you are on the journey toward your own fearless creative life, there is room for you right here. Friends, today's episode is all about creative practices. I'm going to talk to you about the 100-Day Project and other recurring creative practices. And we are going to really talk about how to set them up to actually serve you. On today's episode, we are going to talk about what is the 100-Day Project, because if you've been following me on Instagram, you've probably been seeing me post a lot of 100-day things. I also want to talk to you just about why I love daily and recurring creative practices, how valuable they can be for you, but also why I don't love daily and recurring creative practices, and maybe some hangups that you've noticed as well. Also, let's talk about some ideas. What are some regular creative practices that have been the most meaningful for me? And also, I want to talk to you about strategies that I have used, the ways that I have learned to brave my own recurring regular creative projects in order to avoid burnout. Let's give ourselves some ways to let ourselves off the hook and to allow our creative play to feel like play. So, before we begin, though, friends, let's get back in with our special starter segment called Keeping It Real. Before we get started on any episode, I like to take a moment and just keep it real with you. I want to tell you some real time thoughts about things that are happening in my own wonderfully imperfect world. And right now, I have to tell you that it is so fitting to be talking about real life and about repeated practices in real life because, friends, over this past week, I got super sick. I spent 3+ days just down for the count in the bed with my sinuses and my nose hurting. If I sound a little stuffy or I do some sniffling, you will have to forgive me. But the ironic thing is that I had been planning to record this episode the day that I got sick. And as I am in the process of launching this podcast, I have also recently started a regular daily practice that I am trying to do every single day. And so I literally lived out so many of the things that I'm going to talk about with you in this episode, which the timing is both perfect and ironic and a little ridiculous. But hopefully, I can practice what I preach here as I share with you my thoughts about how to take care of yourself and tackle those projects that are ongoing over long periods of time. So let's get to it. Let's talk first of all about what is a recurring daily practice? What do I mean by that? And why do I think they're kind of amazing? So, this is a general phrase. I understand reoccurring daily practice. But right now, as I'm talking to you, the example I'm going to use the most is called the 100-Day Project. The 100-Day Project, friends, I don't even know where it began, but it is something that has been happening for years in the creative communities on social media. And basically, the idea is that for 100 days, everybody practices something over and over and over again, or everybody creates something over and over and over again. People can do really wide reaching things like one I've seen ones that are like 100 days of playing with media, which just would mean pulling out your paints or your paper or whatever. And I've seen really specific ones where people are like 100 days of lettering drills, or even more specifically, something like actually what I'm doing, which is going to be called 100 Days of Botanical Illustrations, or actually, botanicals. Strike that. Hashtag 100 Days of Botanicals. What I'm going to do for you is in our notes. If you head to the link in this podcast description, I have notes for you, and I will link to you my hashtag where I have done this 100-day project, and to the hashtag that I used when I did the 100-day project back in, I want to say, like 2016. Um, but the beauty of anything like this, any project where we are coming back to it again and again and again, is that it really can build your creative muscles in a way that nothing else can. No matter what it is that you're doing on a regular basis, whether it's a morning journaling practice or an exercise routine, or I don't care, a daily nap, whatever it is that you want to do day after day after day, what happens when we engage in something on repeat is that we learn so much more about how to do said thing than we will if we just do it from time to time. The other thing is that it can give us this opportunity to grow at a more exponential level, because part of the growth process in creativity is improving on what you've already done. And so if you are drawing a flower every day, like I'm trying to do, every day my flowers are going to have more information. Like, my knowledge of drawing flowers is going to be more in depth because of the time that I spent the day before and the day before and the day before. There's another thing about creative practices that I have to be honest, I almost don't even want to talk about this pro because it makes me squirrely. I am a free spirit through and through. The more that you get to know me, if you've spent any time in my communities or with me on social media or in person, or if you've just started following, you are probably getting this vibe from me that I like to break the rules. I like to do things my own way. It's one of the things about me that I've learned to cherish, but also that obsession with newness, that obsession with not falling in line can sometimes cause me to be a little bit of a rebel. And so I'm going to share a pro that honestly sometimes feels like a con for me if I'm not careful, because my resistance can like build up super fast if I'm not careful about approaching this mindset with grace. But the thing about a reoccurring practice is that it builds for us a muscle of follow through. What happens is the more that you show up for something that you promise to do, the more you build self trust. And self trust is so key. Even in our art practice, self trust is key. Self trust is key in taking care of ourselves better, in creating fearlessly. Our self trust is kind of that foundational thing. And so when we can practice things that are going to build our self trust over and over and over again, we are going to have a more solid foundation on which to build a life that we truly love. Okay, forgive me. I had a ginormous coughing fit that I just had to cut out there. So if I sound a little scratchy, this is just par for the course right now, keeping it real with you. But I just want to reiterate that building of self-trust through showing up for yourself in the way that you say that you're going to is not something that is easily quantified. I can't tell you how amazingly important that is, especially on the journey toward confidence, on the journey toward fearless living, on the journey toward just being our most realist creative self. Aside from that more internal emotional experience where we build self-trust with ourselves and we create this trust that we're going to follow through and that we're going to make the things happen that we say we're going to make happen, there's a practical element that's much more tangible, and it is just that creating for yourself a recurring, especially daily practice helps you like build into your life habits and routines that are going to support you as a creative person. If you want to create a floral every day, like I'm going to tell you more about in just a few, you have to start as I am considering how to make that happen in my life, I have to build some routines into my life. I have to create space within my day to draw a flower, to record myself doing so. I have to create ways that I can do it when I am not at home. I have to create ways that I can draw that flower if I'm sitting on my couch. Because I'm committed to this process, what happens is I actually build for myself a creative practice that is going to serve me even when my 100-ish days are done. So there are a million other reasons to love the 100-day project or any other reoccurring creative practice. Those are my top two, but also, I mean, you're building a body of work. The more things you create, the more work you have in, like to show for yourself. It also helps you develop your style. I could go on and on and on and on. But instead, let's talk for a minute about what I don't love about these practices that we are doing day after day after day. What don't I love about this concept of a project that's long term that requires you to invest in it again and again and again? I mean, friends, let's be 100% honest. It is hard to do. And if you are approaching any recurring creative practice with really strict rules and a like this pass fail mindset, it can be a total setup. And I cannot tell you how many times in my experience as a mentor, working with clients, in my experience as a creative trying to start a new project, and in just the witnessing of dear friends that are creating projects of their own, I can't tell you how often I have seen people burn out and get frustrated and mark themselves as a failure before they've really even had a chance to get into their groove. And so I think that we have to be honest about the difficulties, about this idea that we're going to do something again and again and again. There is a real shame trigger that we are all kind of um, predisposed to fall right into. And that is this idea that if we don't do it right, if we don't follow the rules, if we don't do it the way that we're quote unquote supposed to, then we are doing it wrong and we have failed. And there is nothing that is good for your creative practice about calling yourself a failure. There isn't. There's also nothing that's good for your confidence and your sense of inspiration and your freedom as a creative person and as a human being. There is nothing about shaming yourself over your shortcomings that is going to help you build into a better person. I just really don't think it works. And that shame spiral is so prominent and so relevant because honestly, let's think about it. Most of the projects that come across our feeds on social media that we're inspired to start involve some sort of a start and a finish line. Whether you're cracking open a brand new journal or you are starting a project 52 scrapbooking every week style project, or you are doing 100-day project, all of those things give they create this opportunity for us to see our shortcomings if we're not careful to wrangle it and get intentional about how we want to approach any creative work, but especially that creative work that requires a long term commitment. So, friends, can tell you a million ideas to make it easier. And trust me, I will. Because I hate to toot my own horn, but I'm kind of the queen of starting projects and then letting myself off the hook if they don't work for me. And by that, I mean like creative personal projects, like, projects that I'm doing for work that I'm getting paid for. It's a very different story. But when we are talking about those personal enrichment projects, those things that really we started because they looked like fun, like play, I am going to tell you right now, I am the first person to release one of those projects when it starts leading me down that path of shame and frustration and sense of failure. Because, as I told you before, I don't think that that is going to serve me as an artist in any way. That being said, I do believe in showing up to things again and again, and I believe in challenging myself to do so, especially if I can find ways to make it work for me. And so I have throughout my career, my life as an artist, I have started a lot of projects, and so many of them have been very meaningful to my creative practice, even if I didn't get to that final finish line, whatever that means. So let's go back in time, and I want to tell you about Shauna Klingerman of, oh, I think it was 2016, but it would have been wise for me to look it up before I started this episode. Honestly, it really doesn't matter that much now, does it? So, Shauna of 2016, she was just dipping her toes into art that was physical, like media. And what I mean by that is that I had been designing digitally and using my computer and a Wacom tablet, if anybody remembers what that is, and Illustrator and Photoshop. Those things were my comfort zone. And I have been creating in Photoshop since for like 10 years at that point, I want to say. But I had been very afraid of dipping my toes into like real art, which turns out, friends, real art is so silly. Like if you're creating a thing, it's art. But 2016 Shauna wasn't as wise as 2022 Shauna. And so she really wanted to get brave and start doing like art. And I heard, I picked up watercolor, I started playing, and right around that time, I heard about the 100-Day Project. It came across my feed on social media. I believe it was the very first time that I had ever heard of it. And I got really excited about the idea of painting day after day after day to help build my skill and to just force me out of the box that I was in where I wasn't creating with real, like my actual hands as often as I wanted to. And so I started that 100-day project and I said, we'll see what we can do. And I cut down a bunch of watercolor paper into 5x7 and 4x6 squares. And day after day after day, I painted a thing. I painted florals and mountainscapes and uh let's see, what else? Ice cream cones and hearts and really kind of whatever I felt like learning for the day. And friends, something happened as I started to dive in. And it's just that I started to discover like my watercolor voice. I started to learn what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy. I started to get um better at like those little things that I wouldn't have learned if I hadn't been diving in over and over again. I learned what it was to overwork the paint. I found certain sides of the paper worked better than others. I learned which tutorials I liked and which ones I absolutely didn't. And day after day after day, for the most ish part, I got to, I want to say, about 46 days of painting watercolor tiny little canvases. And I'm going to share a photo with you of that in the description from my Instagram because, friends, when I hit right around day 40, day 30, and I started to see my work just piling up, this sense of pride just welled up in me. And all of a sudden, I felt like an artist. And I mean, I had already been an artist. I knew how to create art. I was creating art, and I knew that on some level, but there was something about the daily showing up to the practice of creating art that like helped it sink in for me that I was an artist. And those days that I did those watercolor paintings really, really built my skills and they really built my confidence and my heart for watercolor painting like just grew. So, why did I start up at day 46? Maybe you're asking that if I have this great success story, what happened? And I was racking my brain, but the truth is, I can't remember. Honestly, I think I got busy with work, like work that I was doing for companies. I was doing a lot of freelance at the time. And I think I just started pouring some of that artistic energy into my actual work. And I don't regret it at all. And I don't look back at that pile of watercolor, which is now some of them are in my closet, some of them are hanging on my wall, but never have I ever looked back at that pile and been like, oh, I failed. I didn't do all 100 days. No, friends, I made a pile of 46, which now that I say it, I feel like I might be like pulling that number out of thin air. It was 40 something or 60 something. It doesn't matter. I ended up with a pile of paintings. Like I had created 46 paintings. And so I wanted to share that story with you because I want you to see the value of this reoccurring practice. Even though I didn't get to the finish line, it still served me. And I will choose to start things like that again and again, even if I know I won't finish, because what I learned along the way and what I took away from that experience was so much more powerful than just an arbitrary number or like hitting some finish line. I have some other regular creative practices that have really served me. And the other one I want to talk to you about is my journaling practice. I am actually going to dedicate an entire episode to my morning routine and my journaling practice. But what I wanted to share here is that in 2020, I decided, like in the thick of it, it was like the summer of 2020. We were, you know, neck deep in a pandemic. It had been a very hard, trying time socially on the United States. All the feels were all over the place for me, and my mental health was struggling. It was suffering. And so, in the effort to find healthy ways to ground myself and to give myself like tangible daily self care, I decided to start a morning journaling practice. And my morning journaling practice is not exactly like what you might see. Well, I mean, we all have our own practices, but it's not a bullet journal. It's not a like just freehand journal. It's not a scrapbook. Instead, it's a combination of stickers that I um, collected from the Illustrated Faith Print and Pray shop, from my own designs as well, lettering practice, and just some free flowing journaling, as well as like just like my calendar for the day. It was just this series of steps that I could do every morning that would help anchor me and ground me so that I would feel like I was starting with my very best foot forward. I started this with the intention of doing it every day, but not with a real end point in mind. Instead, just with that challenge. Can I do this every day? Well, friends, that um, practice turned out to be so incredibly meaningful to me that now, today, almost 2 full years later, I have filled journal after journal after journal. I am a huge Archer and Olive fan. They're my favorite journals. If you're looking for a journal to like that you can really treasure, I recommend it 100%. I'm gonna put that link in in the description as well, but you can use the code Shauna10 to save 10%. But regardless, I fell in love with this practice of checking in every morning with my heart and creating something kind of beautiful, and just I actually saw the that step of building self-trust happen as I created a regular practice of journaling every day. Remember when we were all the way at the beginning of the episode, we talked about how doing something on a regular basis and showing up for yourself can really build self-trust. I 100% saw that happen with my journaling practice. And to this day, I still get up in the morning and try to spend at least a little bit of time in my journal just to anchor myself and get grounded before I face everything that the world has coming my way. So, those are just a few of the things that I have tried over time. Other things I've tried for a while, I did weekly live create dates on Facebook where I was doing an art journal page every single week for community and connection and to build my art journal practice. For a while, I was doing weekly art journal pages just on my own. For a while, I did, friends, I could go on and on and on and on, but all of the things that I've started, all of the things that I've finished, and all of the things that I have not finished, which is much higher than the number of things that I've finished, all of those things have truly built my sense of confidence, my sense of creativity, and my self trust in ways that I can't even begin to describe. And so, if you have considered this idea of trying to introduce a reoccurring regular practice into your life, I recommend it 100%. So, if you are listening to this and you're saying, Shauna, you're preaching to the choir, I love daily journaling, I love the 100-Day Project, I love the idea of creating a body of repeating work, but I just don't know if I have it in me to see it through. Or, but I'm so scared to start because I don't want to do it wrong. Or, I'm not sure if I'm one of the people that is allowed to do such a thing because I've heard that too. Let me share with you some tips, some strategies, and I'm going to share with you the way that I am approaching the 100-Day Project as I dive back into it for the first time after years. And maybe as I share, it will inspire you to reconsider how you can write your own rules for whatever project you want to dive into next. So, as I am stepping into the 100-Day Project, the first thing that I thought about was, do I have space in my life for this? If you are already entirely overwhelmed, I want to encourage you to pick something small. Or maybe the better way to say that is choose projects that are going to serve you where you are in your life right now. I've had phases in my life where I had a child that was really sick and was regularly ending up in the hospital. And it was very consuming time wise. During a time like that, I wouldn't want to pick the kind of project that would require me to be present in my office in my studio here for, 45 minutes regularly every single day. I wouldn't want to pick something that would require me to change like the laws of the universe. Let's be honest about what's going on in our lives, and then let's set ourselves up for success by choosing things that are going to actually work for us. So, as I thought about the 100-Day Project this year, I thought I really want to do regular drawing and painting to build my skills because it's been a while since I've done that. I really want to create regular content for my social media, but I really want to set myself up for success by choosing something manageable and versatile, and by choosing something that is flexible enough to meet me where I'm at. Because, friends, I'm kind of a busy person. I think that we all are. So I chose a small canvas. I chose a tiny A6 Hobonichi journal, which I found on Amazon. I'm going to link everything that I'm using. I have been linking everything I've been using in the 100-Day Challenge. In over on my Amazon faves, I have a social media board where I link all the things I share on social media. So I will be sure to link you to that board if you're wondering, if you want to know what book should you get or what does A6 mean? Go check out my list because it will kind of help answer those questions for you. But I started with a small journal. The A6 is small enough that I don't know exactly how big it is. But I'm going to compare it to like a 3 by 5, maybe even smaller than a 3 by 5, which means that it's really easy for me to draw one flower and fill up one page. That was really important to me because I didn't want to set myself up with a project that would be really hard to sustain. The other thing that I do when I pick any recurring project, and this is partially because of my personality, so take this with a grain of salt, but I like to pick something that has enough flexibility to keep me coming back for more. If something gets too mundane and too routine, I have a tendency to run for the hills, which that's just me. I like new things. I like adventure. I like the what if, and reoccurring regular routine things don't always serve me because I get bored real fast. So, in any recurring project, whether we're talking about my daily journaling or my 100-day project, I try to set rules that provide me with a wide enough framework to switch it up as I need to. So, the only rule that I'm walking into for this 100-day project is that I'm going to put all of these botanical illustrations in this book. That is the only rule that I really have that's like set in stone. And even that rule could be a little bit broken because what if what if I was unexpectedly out late at a restaurant with some friends and I realized I hadn't drawn anything yet? I could honestly turn a napkin upside down, draw a flower on that napkin, washi tape it down in my book, and I still will have met the one single rule that I have to follow. So set a framework for yourself that is as flexible as you need it to be. Some people really thrive on routine and regularity. I have some friends that journal, and every day they journal the same list of things. They work through the same prompts because that is what serves them best. And I just know what serves me best is flexibility. So I give myself a variety of things to choose from so that I can um, basically stay sane. Another thing that I do to help um, make this achievable for me is that I set my terms, but I kept it relatively broad. And what I mean by that is I want to draw a flower every day. But do I have to draw with the same type of media? No. Does it have to be a flower? No. One day I did like a branch with leaves. Does it have to be the same style? No, 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 no. And the reason that I picked up that Hobonichi journal is because I know from experience that that paper inside of that journal, it's called Tomoe River paper. It is very smooth. It is watercolor friendly, brush marker friendly, and just ink friendly. So I knew that it would work with all of my tools. And that means that I get that flexibility that I need so that I'm not going to get bored on day 6. Because frankly, if I'm not careful, I know that I will. The other thing that I really, really, really think can be a huge boost, and it's part of how I've set my project up, is the idea of creating some accountability. So, my 100-day project, I am trying to share a reel almost every single day with my workflow process. Now, the reason for that is multi has a lot of what's the word? multifaceted. That's like a way too complicated word for what I want to say here. There are several reasons why I wanted to share as I go. But the most important one is that I learned during my first 100-day project that the momentum of sharing my work and getting responses from people fueled me to continue going. And today and yesterday and the day before, every day that I post one of my reels with one of my illustrations, it is your comments that keep me like jazzed up because I'm like, oh, people are coming back for more. People want to see this. This is something that matters. It adds value to it for me. Also, added bonus that it is good for my own social media and my brand. And even things like Reels bonuses are aligning well with the idea of getting in and daily sharing something on my Instagram feed. The final thing that is probably the most important part for me about this 100-day project goal and the way that I'm setting it up for myself is that I am not basing my results, like I'm not scoring myself, I'm not rating my success based on how on keeping with a schedule. And what I mean by that is I'm calling it the 100-ish day project sometimes in my posts. And that just means that I'm going to draw 100 botanical illustrations, God willing, and I am going to do them at hopefully in 100-ish days. That means that when life happens, for example, I got super sick last week. I was down for the count. This was not the kind of sick where you're like, still kind of puttering around doing things. I was in bed. I was sleeping. I was miserable. And so I was not drawing florals or making reels. So I lost about 5 days of my project. And you know what? That's okay because 2 years from now, I know from experience that it's not going to matter to me how many days it took me. So, in the very front of my journal, I wrote the start date and I left that end date finished, and I'll fill it in whenever I'm ready. And that is just fine. So, those are the strategies that I am plugging into this practice. And those are the kinds of strategies, honestly, that I plug into every practice. Because in the end, as soon as our creative play becomes so bogged down with rules and goals and pressure and mile like benchmarks, the more that we let those things invade our creative play space, the harder it is to get excited about creating things. And I want to be a person that creates without fear. I want to be a person that creates for the sheer pleasure of creating. And I'm going to tell you right now in advance that on whatever day that this project stops feeling like it is fueling me and it starts feeling like it is something that I'm ashamed of, I will close that little journal up and I will put it on my shelf and I will say, well, that's good for now. Because I have about a zillion unfinished little mini books and journals and notebooks that just wait for me to come back to them or that have just made peace with the fact that this is the way that they're going to stay. And I really think that that's okay. So, friends, if hearing all this has you a wee bit inspired, and maybe you are considering the idea of a recurring creative practice of your own, let me give you just a few really, really, really simple steps that you can follow, that you can like walk through to make sure that you set up a creative practice that is designed to actually serve you and to bring you all the benefits that can come from creating day after day after day. So, if you're tired of burning out, here are a few ways to let yourself off the hook and allow your creative play to actually feel like play. First of all, friends, set reasonable goals, like way smaller than you think. If you think, um, like, if your first instinct is to create a scrapbook page every day, I would encourage you to look at your life and think about how you could kind of step that back a little bit. If maybe you think, I want to create a bouquet every day of florals, I would just look at that, think about the time that it's going to take, and decide if you can go smaller. Maybe you just want to do one single flower. Maybe you want to do a study in leaves. However, you can make it a small, achievable task. It's going to serve you because you are going to build more momentum if you set yourself up for success from the very beginning. The other tip, and this one is so flipping important, and I'm telling you, I'm going to tell you to do it right now, and then you're not even going to do it because most people say, yeah, 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 and they don't do this. So I'm calling you out right now. Friends, create space in your calendar. Does your life have a place that you can create regularly every day? If not, that is a problem for you to solve. And the solution isn't that you just don't have time. Nope, not true. Creative practices can take as few as 2 minutes and as many as 200 minutes or more. So decide what kind of time that you can commit and then carve that time out and honor it. Remember when I talked about building self-trust? Let's let's pretend for a minute that creativity or this practice is a friend that you want to get to know better. Let's just pretend that it's just a person that has a lot to offer you. Maybe it's like somebody that's very wise, and what you want is to glean wisdom and beauty from this amazing soul. Okay. So, say that you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I think the best way to really connect with my new friend creativity is to go on a coffee date or go on a walk every single day. So you make this plan, I'm going to go on a walk every single day with my new friend. And then day one, you show up bright eyed and bushy tailed. And then day two, you're about 5 minutes late. And then day three, you call and cancel because for whatever reason, because um you don't know what you're going to make for dinner and you have to figure it out, because you haven't finished your chores, because your toddlers are being needy. Whatever reason that you have, it is very valid. I am not saying it's not a valid reason, but when you call creativity up and say, I can't make it today, I'm sorry, let's do it tomorrow. Or even worse, you just straight up don't show up for what you planned to do with your new incredible friend. What's going to happen in your relationship with said creativity? If you flake out over and over and over again on your creative practice is going to stop showing up for you. And what I mean is, you're going to feel uninspired. You're going to sit down to do things and you're going to be like, your like brain is going to like be overflowing, and You're going to be tired before you even begin. And before you know it, you're going to be like, I'm not even capable of creating. Why did I think I could be friends with such an amazing, free spirited, beautiful soul when I can't, I don't have time for it? I think that we really need to evaluate that question of if we have time for something. And I don't mean you don't have time for it. I actually mean the exact opposite. I mean, think about what you are choosing instead of creativity day after day after day. Whether that's like, scrolling social media and feeling jealous, or it is um like re-mopping the floor even though you've already done it, or maybe it is just zoning out because you're exhausted. Friends, let's find out. Let's really, really dig into how we can let our creativity be a thing that refreshes and rejuvenates us so that we don't have to choose self care over creativity, but instead we let creativity be part of our self care. And the way to do that is to disconnect, to like totally pull free all of those bonds of shoulds and not enoughs and um, rules and pass fail mindsets. If you can release all of those things and creativity can just be a space for you to get to know this incredible part about yourself, then you're going to crave it. You're going to start wanting to do it more regularly. But none of that is going to play out if you don't give yourself the time. I'm scolding you right now. So I know that you heard all that and you're like, yeah, 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 I'll add it to my calendar. No, add it to your calendar. Where in your life does this fit day after day after day? For me, my florals happen in the evenings, and a lot of times I do them on the couch while I'm watching TV, and that is part of my process. And it means my video quality isn't always as good as it might be, but I don't care because what I care the most about is showing up for this beautiful little part of my soul that likes to create. What I care about is building real trust with the part of me that is craving creative expression and freedom. I want to prove to myself that I'm willing to like m- choose creativity. And it to do that, you have to literally take the time and you have to choose it again and again. So, as you are creating your own plan for whatever practice you want to show up for again and again, I want you to pick a time that this could actually happen for reals. And then I want you to honor it. Challenge yourself to honor that commitment, not because you have to, not because it's the only way that you won't be a failure in this world of creatives, but because it matters to you and you want to pour your resources into this part of you. The final tip, and I mentioned this when I was talking about my own practice and friends, that is to share, 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 share. I know that it is more intimidating for some of us than for other ones of us to put ourselves out there and to share our work. Part of my own fearless journey has been finding peace with sharing even when things aren't perfect. It has been releasing those judgments and just letting my work kind of be what it is without pre-evaluating whether it's worthy. But that work has taken me time. That is a lot of what we talk about in my fearless art. And I'm not going to lie, it takes time to build confidence and ease around sharing the things you create. I'm not going to pretend like it's easy because it's not. There's a lot of things in our hearts and in our minds that we have to kind of press through. So I'm not expecting for it not to feel scary for you, but I am encouraging you to consider what it might feel like if you gave yourself permission to show this in between. And what I mean by that is when we show up in even public spaces, in even things like our Instagram, social media feed, when we show up and we are willing to be vulnerable enough to share a thing that's not it's not everything we would want it to be, or that's not perfect, or that is the early stage in our learning process. When we share those kinds of things, not only do we create space for other people that are at the beginning of their journey, which is so super important, but also, friends, we create momentum behind our growth because people tune in to watch us grow and improve. People actually flipping love that. And I think we underestimate how sometimes showing up honestly in our messy starts can really build honest connection and community with people in a way that showing up all polished just never can. And so, as you start your practice, I want to challenge you to share your work every day. If you're nervous about the permanence of this or having an Instagram grid with all these squares of the same thing, that's fine. Stories are such a great place to share like real time images of what's happening in our lives. But by sharing your work, you are going to build momentum. You are going to build community with other people that are doing their own creative practices. And you are going to build confidence because, truth be told, about, oh, let's say 87% of the hurdle for putting yourself out there is actually just getting comfortable with putting yourself out there. And the only way to build that skill is to actually build that skill, which is interesting because that's exactly what I'm talking about here with reoccurring creative practices. Friends, the only way to build a skill in any area is through building the skill. It's through practice. There's one more thing I want to share with you. And I just think it's important because it's a mindset thing that can make a real difference as you approach a daily practice of any kind or a reoccurring practice if daily's not for you. And it is this: the word practice can mean a few things, right? Let's think about it. Practice is a verb, right? It's the act of practicing. Practice is also a noun, it is a practice. And I like to remember that practicing is both those things because it can get easy to think of practice as only the actual action of doing the thing on the page. And that certainly is practice, and that is going to grow your skills. But practice is also the noun. It is also um the event. The event of practicing is part of the practice. Am I getting a little weird here? Is that confusing? The event of practicing is part of the practice because it is through the practice, the reoccurring practice, that we get to build our skills through practice. It's two things. One is this over and over and over again thing that we do, and one of it is the actual action of refining our skills. And in order to have a successful creative practice, you have to create a creative practice in your life. In order to practice creativity successfully, you have to create a practice of practicing in your life. I don't know. I don't know if anybody else is amused by that play on words, but I like to think about that because on those days that I'm not feeling especially inspired or especially talented, I like to remember that the practice is in not just the act of practicing, but the practice of practicing. And that sometimes gets me over the hurdle and encourages me to put in the time because I'm doing more than just building a skill here. I'm building a way of being. So, friends, I want to know what you are going to do. My challenge to you is to think about what practice can you weave into your life? And then think about that practice and make it easier. Whatever comes to your mind, step it back about 10 steps, make it easier, and then plug yourself into it. Put it on your calendar and start building that beautiful practice of practicing because in the act of showing up for creativity, it is going to do something incredible. It is going to show right back up for you, and you are going to be surprised at what lives inside of you when you just make enough space to allow it to bubble out. Oh my goodness, this is getting long, but I can't leave you without a permission slip for the week. So, friends, remember that here at Fearless, our intention is to close out our time together each week with a virtual permission slip of sorts. I will be over here virtually writing it for you with my words. And I want to encourage you, if this resonates for you, take these words, write them down for yourself, sign it with your own name because you get to write permission for yourself in this thing we call adulthood. And I want to nudge you toward giving yourself abundant permission to create space for the things that you love. So, dear friends, you have permission to take the time to connect with your creativity. And you can do that however you would like. Set your own rules, decide what's going to serve you, and then commit to showing up again and again. Because when you plug in to that practice, it is going to pay you back in spades. You have permission, friends. Create some space, take some time. You decide your schedule. You are responsible for your life, and I want your life to include the things that feed you. Okay, so I'm leaving you with your challenge. What do you want to do regularly to build your own self trust and your own creativity and to practice the idea of practice? Maybe you want to practice your lettering drills every day. Maybe you want to journal on a daily basis. Maybe there's 100 days of something calling your name. Whatever it might be, you write the rules and then you let me know what you choose. I want to hear whether you want to comment on my social media, here on the podcast description on my website, or if you're over with us on YouTube. Hi, YouTube friends. You can comment below. Tell me what you are going to do. What is calling your name? And maybe if you have any questions or struggles when you imagine doing said thing, I would love to help you out. So share with me and be sure, my friends, when you share to tag me at Shauna Klingerman. Use the hashtag fearless with Shauna Klingerman. And definitely share, review, subscribe to this podcast so that we can keep in touch and I can share some more tips for creativity and fearless living and going in to each and every day with full permission to live our best lives day after day after day. That is all I have for you. Definitely find me on Instagram at Shauna Klingerman and on Facebook at Shauna Klingerman Designs. Head over to my website. There is a link in this podcast description. And friends, until we meet again, I want you to think about how you are honoring your friend creativity. How are you are making space in your life for this beautiful gift that has been given to you? And most importantly, remember that you are the boss of you. So be a kind one. Use your creative practices to build your confidence, to care for your souls, and most of all, use your creativity to enjoy your one wild and precious life more fully. No matter where you are in your creative endeavors, friend, you deserve the space to create and to live and to enjoy the work you do in all of your endeavors. And until we meet again, my friends, let's choose love.